Today we're talking about the top 10 deck builders of all time. Morty down the street, my stepdad Paul, anyone who's ever built a deck in their... No, we're talking about board games, yes, silly gooses. Welcome to Room and Board, my name's Chris George, and I've got two top 10 lists for you today. My own personal top 10, my 10 favorite deck builders of all time, and then a community top 10, which was submitted by my lovely patrons over on Patreon and Discord. And this is just a fun thing that we've been doing. Over on Discord, we choose a topic, and then everybody's been putting together their top 10 lists. And so the awesome Vault Boy does all the spreadsheet magic and puts them all together and gives them all points. And then we can see what everybody who votes and everybody who submits their list, what the lists kind of end up to be and what games rise to the top and what games fall into obscurity. So you can listen to the entire community, or if you think that I'm just the smartest person in the world, well, I'm honored. You're wrong, but I'm honored. And you can just hear my personal list as well. I'm excited about this list, though, because deck building, and we chose deck building, pool building, bag building also falls in this category to open it up, right? Because the feeling of it is fairly similar. For those of you who are unfamiliar, the idea of deck building or pool building, well, let's just go to what Board Game Geek has to say, because that's also how we're using, or what we're using to base our discussion on. In this deck, bag, and pool building category, players play cards out of individual decks, seeking to acquire new cards and to play through their decks iteratively, improving upon over time with card acquisition. And this is the same with pool building, bag building. Whenever you start with something not great, and then over the course of the game, develop that into something really cool, that's what falls into this category. This is different from deck construction. Deck construction, all that work happens before the game begins. Something like Magic the Gathering, you have an entire large pool of very expensive cards to purchase and then add into a deck, which you bring to a game night and then you play against an opponent. That's different because all of that happens outside of the game. This is specific to things that happen inside of the game. You all kind of start at the same level, and then through the actions that you take throughout the game, you get to change up your own unique experience. And when I did my mechanics ranking list, I think this was number 3, or maybe even number 2. It was very high. I absolutely adore games that have this, because I love the idea of uniqueness and developing that uniqueness over the course of the game. And we ended up with a total list of 75 games. 75 games made it onto various people's lists. Stick around to the end here, the honorable mentions. I'm going to run through the list very quickly and say what was where to give you all the suggestions you could ever want for deck building goodness. But we're here to talk about the cream of the crop, the best of the best, the decks of the deck. So let's get right into it. I'm going to start with my own personal top 10. We're going to go back and forth, 10, 10, etc. But I'll go first because that's who you tuned in to see. And then we'll actually leave the community list for the grand finale, the grand reveal at the end. One thing I should say before I begin is that for my personal list, I ranked these not necessarily in terms of how much I enjoy the game, because I like all of these games, but I wanted to rank the list, and especially for any of these sort of mechanics-focused lists moving forward, I tend to enjoy to rank them based upon how much I enjoy that mechanic in the game, if that makes sense. So otherwise, it'll just end up being a rehashing of past lists, my own favorite games. They'll always end up at the top spot, and that to me is a little bit less interesting. So I really tried to focus on how the mechanics make me feel and why the mechanics make me feel that way. And then, of course, overall enjoyment plays a factor, but I really wanted to focus on that idea of the bag building and the deck building and that process. And so games that I really enjoy and have been really enjoying, and that ended up on a couple other people's lists, but aren't in the top 10. Something like Rococo, for example, where you are building that sort of pool of cards. I think I enjoy Rococo maybe more than some of the games on this list. But if you really want to sink your teeth into this mechanic, and I'm a mechanics guy, mechanics first, that's what I wanted to center this list around, the enjoyment of that experience. And then everybody ranks their list differently as well. So that's how I think the community list is actually a really valuable tool, because you don't just have to take my word for it, you can take the words of a number of people. And so how the community top 10 was decided is I took the ranking of wherever it is. Well, really, Vault Boy did this. Thank you again, Vault Boy. So if it ended up on number 10 on someone's list, you get 1 point. If it's number 1 on someone's list, you get 10 points, right? And then I multiplied that value. Well, I say I, but again, it's Vault Boy. This is a video collab between me and him, as some other patrons rightly suggested. But then we multiplied it by the number of lists on which it occurred, because I think that stat is relevant. I feel like if it makes someone's top 10, that's still a feat, right? Making the top 10 of anything, any sort of top 10 game list, I know you probably have skipped everybody else's 90, 100 to 11 and just go to see their top 10 because you rightfully assume that all the other games are garbage. Although I'm getting to the point where I'm starting to cull things for my collection, and it's really hard because I have almost a shelf that I like everything on. And that makes me think of these top 100s with a lot more validity because there's so much great gaming goodness out there. And in fact, 75 deck builders, which you'll hear about today. But let's get into it now. Let's really get into it with my number 10, and that is the Quacks of Quedlingberg. I do not own this game yet. It is on my list to pick up. I'll probably wait for a sale or plead to the publisher to send it to me to give them a glowing review. But I've only played this game once, and that's all I needed to put it on this list. It is so good. It's so fun. This is a bag building game. This is why we opened it up to pool building and bag building, because it's a similar feel, but it's all around this push your luck mechanic. Basically, you'll have this swirl, this little potion swirl, and you're going to be drawing tokens from your own individual bag. And as long as you don't draw any white tokens, you can keep drawing from the bag. And if you draw a white token, that's okay, but as long as the value doesn't go over 7, then you can keep pulling tokens from the bag. And you can stop whenever you want, because wherever you stop along the track, that will indicate the points that you get and the amount of buying power that you have to purchase more tokens to put into your bag, which gives you a lesser chance of pulling out that white token or numerous white tokens. And you can get higher on the track, and you can just snowball and get everything you want. But if you bust, you then have to make a choice between adding new tokens to your bag or taking the amount of points that you got. And I just think this game is it's so clever. All of the different tokens feel fun. There's variable conditions and variable ways that you can score these tokens, variable powers that these tokens can give you. You mix the cards up at the beginning. So these blue tokens, for example, might have a different power one game from the next. It plays super quickly. Everybody's just doing their own thing, but it's so exciting to pull things from the bag and to try to push your luck to get one more, because you know the contents of your bag. You know that there's that awesome level 4 token that you bought last round that hasn't come out yet, but you also know that there are 2 white tokens in there. And do you push your luck because you want to push ahead, or do you not? It's just such a fun experience. Super easy to get into, a low rules overhead. Just a fantastic experience. Why it is only a number 10, because I do really enjoy it, is because the bag building aspect of it isn't as fun to me as the push your luck aspect. They're both really fun. I like the different powers, but it's the push your luck aspect that makes this really shine for me. And so that's why the pool building aspect makes it not as important. It still is important. I still love the different powers, and I still love the choices that you can choose between the different tokens, but the push your luck is so satisfying as well. That's why it ends up at number 10. Moving along to our community number 10, this one clocks in on 5 lists, garnering a total of 15 points across those lists, giving it a final score of 75. And that is Star Realms, or Hero Realms. Star Realms and Hero Realms are essentially the same game. They're just different themes. And so we mashed those together. I think there were 3 Star Realms and 2 Hero Realms, right? But those being mashed together means it makes the top 10, and I think it's a good representation of that. Star Realms is a bit different than Hero Realms because it plays to 1 to 4 players. Hero Realms only plays 2 players. And I feel like you should only kind of play this game at 2 players. I've only played Hero Realms. I haven't played Star Realms. I'm just going to this listing on Board Game Geek because it has more pictures. But it's very simple. You're going to have a number of different cards that are out there. These cards will often be associated with a different color as well. You can see here's the market of cards that you can purchase. You can add those cards into your deck, and then you just keep on cycling through. And the goal is to generally whittle your opponent's health points down to 0. What's interesting about this game and this sort of stats is that our number 9 was actually on 4 players lists, but it had a higher ranking on those 4 and garnered more points than the 5. Like 5, it being on 5 lists and only getting 15 points, that's like an average positioning of 7th on people's lists. But again, really good enough to show up, right? Hero Realms is a great game. It's really solid, and it's so slick. Like, the box is so portable, and the amount of game that you get into in a small box is really very satisfying. It's really satisfying to chain the number of different colors. You're saying, okay, I guess I'm going for a red strategy this time, or a green strategy this time, and then picking up those other cards that complement your deck. It's fast. The back and forth is really fun. And I'd heard a lot of people talk about Hero Realms and Star Realms, and I'd never played it. I go, oh yeah, it's just like a deck builder. I know deck builders, but the compact nature of this, the fact that it's really tailored for 2 players and gives that head-to-head fighting experience versus just trying to get the most points, as a lot of deck builders do. Star Realms and Hero Realms have a lot to offer, and the fact that they are so cheap, I feel if you like the genre, this is something you should try if you haven't yet. So that's our community number 10, Star Realms or Hero Realms. Moving along to my personal number 9, we have Clank, a deck building adventure. Oh, that's why that spot was open on my shelf, because somebody's borrowing it right now. I came back home to see a bunch of gaps on the shelf, and I thought, oh, this is great. I have more space than I expected. And I didn't. Because I lent games out for the summer, and now I'm getting them back and have nowhere to put them. But that's okay. That's a good problem to have. Clank is clocking in at my number 9 because it represents something that I really love in deck building games, and that is a deck builder with a board element to it. I find this idea to be so novel and so exciting, and I feel like they complement each other so well. To have a straight deck building game is good, but for me, I like when it is meshed with something, and having a board element where the deck also limits or encourages what you can do in another space. I think it helps translate the theme, and it helps translate the sort of abstract nature that a lot of deck builders have, and gives it a real presence. And that's what Clank does. You're going to be delving into the dungeon. This is a upside down board. That's a right side up board. You start at the top, and you got to delve into the dungeon. You got to get yourself a piece of loot, and you got to get out of the dungeon before the dragon murders you. And if the dragon murders you and you're below the half of the board, you're dead. You get 0 points. The dragon murders you and you're at the top of the board, you still get your points, but if you manage to get out, you get a 20-point bonus. It's really solid. It's super fun, and I've only played the base Clank, and I know that every iteration upon the system is regarded to be better and better. Clank Acquisitions Incorporated, the legacy game, that they now have a second edition or a second sequel that's come out. I've heard nothing but great things, and it's one that I really would like to try. I feel like if I had tried that, due to the well-regarded nature of it, it would probably be higher on my list. But as it is right now, Clank's number 9. I think it's still a solid game, really nice system. But sometimes the cards don't feel that exciting to me. And so sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. And so it doesn't have that like wow factor. There's such a disparity between the cards that I like the board element. The cards themselves don't necessarily have that wow factor, but it does have such a solid base and is such a solid game that I had to include it. Our community number 9 is The Loop. The Loop by Pandasaurus. And if you look at The Loop, again, it has those elements that I like. I've never played The Loop. I really need to get it to table because I've heard it's fantastic. But basically, you're trying to stop the evil Foe-zilla, Dr. Foe, from causing mayhem in a bunch of different eras in time. And it's all about going to these places in time and creating paradoxes so that you destroy versions of Dr. Foe or something like that. But the main crux of the game is you're going to have all these artifacts which you can use for abilities, but you want to use these cards multiple times before you get rid of them. You can go to areas and they'll have cards there and you can take them and put them onto your deck. And you can also use the same cards twice in a turn if you have enough energy. And so it's figuring out that cycle of energy and also the cycle of adding new artifacts and new cards into your deck that creates this pool building experience. This was on 4 people's lists. It garnered a total of 24 points, ending up with a total score of 96 points. Making it onto 4 people's lists, but beating out Hero Realms and Star Realms, just on the backs of it being ranked higher, I think is exciting to me and makes me take note. I've heard nothing but great things about the loop, and definitely something I want to try. And this only makes me want to try it more. Moving along to my particular number 8, and that is Dune Imperium. Dune Imperium, also Board Game Geek's number 8 of overall games, so probably why I put it there. Dune Imperium is coincidentally by the same designer of Clank, Paul Denon, which I had a lovely interview with him over on the Dice Tower, if you want to check that out, on behalf of WSBG, World Series of Board Gaming. Dune Imperium is a game that, from the first half of the game, I said, oh yeah, I love this. I'm going to immediately want it into my collection. And then there was a bunch of these intrigue cards that I found a bit swingy, and then I thought, I don't know if I really like this game, but every game that I've played has only increased my enjoyment and my interest for this game. It just keeps on going up, which I think is a really cool testament to a game. And it's helpful because I feel there's a lovely element of deck building here. And I love seeing the new cards. I love that in that stack of cards, you don't get to see that much. You don't get to really go through your deck all that much. There's around 10 rounds in the game. It's a maximum of 10 rounds in the game. And so with that, you potentially get to see your same card for 4 times, right? If you think about it in that aspect, unless you start getting an engine that lets you draw more cards. And playing with the deck building in here is something that I'm still excited to go back and to do. Now, there's a lot of other great things that are happening in this game, which is why, it is lower. I do love the combat portion, which I think is not really part of the deck building. Sure, you can get combat symbols on the deck building, but this is more about timing and choosing when to pick your battles. I also both love and hate how restrictive the worker placement is in this game. Because if you are getting the cards just for their card abilities and you're not paying attention to the symbols on the cards, you may lock yourself out of places on the board that might benefit you even more. And so going back and forth between those two ideas is really exciting. I guess I didn't really explain the game for those of you who haven't played it. It's a worker placement deck building hybrid. But in order to play your workers, you have to play a card from your hand. So not only am I reducing the number of cards in my hand to be used for buying other cards later on, but each card has a specific symbol that's associated with a number of spots on the board. And if I'm not playing that card that has that symbol, I can't put my worker there. So I'm really restricted in terms of that worker placement by placing things down. I've only played this at 3 to 4. At 2 players, you add in an automated opponent, and the same with 1 player. But it's really solid. It's really fun. It's got a nice mash of things all together, and it's one game that feels like a race. And I don't usually like races necessarily in game, but I don't mind in this one because it keeps the adrenaline pumping and really lets you sink your teeth into the game. Asymmetrical players. Everybody has one card that does something different. Yeah, it's one of those games, the more I play it, the more I enjoy it. And so it had to be on the list. I think, again, lower because while the deck building is fun, I also love the battles and I love the worker placement as well. And so I feel like those are, while the deck building, impacts them, it's not necessarily pure deck building as well, which I really enjoy, right? I just talked about how I love deck building with a board. And then I'm docking it apparent points for that. No, I just think like the satisfaction of building the deck isn't the only thing that I get here. I get a lot of satisfaction from a lot of other things as well. Moving along to our collective number 8, and that's Legendary Encounters, or the Legendary System, right? Legendary has a bunch of different games. It re-implements the Legendary Marvel, re-implemented by, you can see 6 more. Legendary Encounters, Firefly, Predator, X-Files, James Bond, Big Trouble in Little China, Buffy the Vampire Slayer. But we're going to go with Legendary Encounters Alien because I feel like that's the most well-known. I have Legendary Encounters Alien. It didn't make my list, but it did make 5 people's lists and also got 24 points. So 24 points, the same amount that the Loop got, but because it was on 5 people's lists, so then technically a little bit lower, it ends up with 120 points, giving it that number 8 spot. And I like Legendary Encounters. I've only played it once. I think I need to play it a little bit more to find a real love for it. And the core premise of it is really exciting. You have all these 5 cards up here that are face down. These are villains or things that you're going to have to overcome. And every turn, one of them gets revealed. But you can go out and reveal them early so you know what is going to be coming to you. You can know what's going to be happening, or you can just say, you know what, I need to spend my money on developing my deck, and I'll deal with whatever pops up. It's a really interesting like push and pull of where do you spend your resources, and talking about it now and pitching it like that honestly makes it sound fun. It makes you want to go back into it. So I don't know. This one just didn't hit to me. I have other games and other games that will appear on this list too that I feel do a similar thing and give me that similar tower defense style with a deck building aspect to it that I will always gravitate towards and prefer. So with that, it's tough for this one to see the table or to get to the table when I have other games like it that I want to explore, but totally understand it being on people's lists, and that's why it is our collective number 8. My number 7 is a crossover with the collective list that we've already seen. It's Hero Realms. I played Hero Realms. I haven't played Star Realms, but like I said, Hero Realms, oh, it says 2 to 4 players. So I think it's only 2. Oh no, it says the game includes basic rules for 2-player game. You don't want to play it as a 4-player game. You just don't want to play it more than 2 players. But as a 2-player game, I had such a great time with it. There's so many different cards. Again, you're just picking, to reiterate what I said in the past, you're picking a faction to go down. The market of cards is interesting. Your deck feels powerful, and it is only focused on the deck building with a side order of punching your opponent in the face. So small, so compact, but such an awesome meaty game in it. Something that anybody who likes deck building should play and enjoy. Moving along to our number 7. Number 7 is a solo-only game. This is a bag building game. It's called Warp's Edge. We have a lot of solo players in the Discord, and that's evident because Warp's Edge appeared on 6 lists, garnering, again, 24 points, but since it was on 6 lists, making it that 144 total. Getting to 144 total points. People love this game. Solo players, if you're a solo player and you like deck building or bag building, because this is a bag builder, you owe it to yourself to try this game. It's so well regarded. You take on the role of a pilot, and you start out like any deck building game. You start behind enemy lines. You start out with a small pool of tokens, and you can develop that over the course of the game. What also is exciting is that I think you can pick a new spaceship every time, which feels cool. It gives you that cool initial ability. You have a variance in enemies that you're going to face as you continually add enemies to the row, and then use your tokens to take actions. Hopefully don't get got too much by the enemy's attacks, and then do it all over again. My number 6 is also a bag builder. This, I think, is the last bag builder on my list, and that's Orléans. I tended to put all the bag builders a little bit lower, again, because I was focusing on deck building. I don't think there was ever a possibility of a bag builder to actually make it to my number 1, because again, I was trying to focus on that deck building aspect, and there's something that, I don't know, I tactilely enjoy the feeling of the cards and that play versus the feeling of tokens. I just do. But Orléans is a really solid bag builder, especially if you like the idea of playing on your own little solo board. Everybody has their own board, which when you draw your players out, you then assign in various spots. And if you fill up those spots, each spot has like 2 or 3 required categories. If you fill that up, you get to take that action over on this main board. And not only do you get to take that action, generally you also get to add a new token into your bag. And over on this main board over there, let's see if I can get a photo. This main board, you're going to be traveling across these little pathways. Every time you travel, you get to pick up one of those goods. Those goods are worth points at the end, or you can use actions to turn them into other things. And you're also going to be establishing bases, sort of strongholds, footholds, whatever you want to call them, little houses on locations on the map. And those also will be worth points. Everything is kind of tied together through that bag building experience, but the points that you get are tied in the goods and the houses that you have and sort of the milestones that you hit. There are certain milestones that you can get. First person to get 4 knights or whatever gets a little person to put in their bag, and they give you additional stuff. So the bag building doesn't really give you points specifically, but it's a means to an end. It's a means to getting the people required to get you new buildings, which then you can use people to generate you resources, and those resources get you points, right? In a sense, of course, it's all to get your points, but it isn't. In addition, there's this main board that at certain points you can cull people from your bag, and that's something that I really enjoy in deck building games, is that trashing element. I never realized how important it was until I saw it in action numerous times against me and thought, oh yeah, you're slimming your deck down or your bag down so that you're only pulling out the good stuff and not dealing with the bad stuff. You can put your people up here and you can get points as well. It's a really fun, solid game. I played this a ton with my parents over the pandemic. We each had a copy, and so they would set up their board and give me like a top-down shot on their iPad of the main map, and then I would set up my board to be exactly the same, and then I would pull from my bag and they would pull from their bags, and anytime I got something, they would just remove it from the supply and put it on a map. It actually worked really well, and we played it a ton. And yeah, a really fun experience. I love how meaty this game is too, right? This is probably maybe the meatiest game on this list, really, and that is pretty exciting to me. This is also something that the first time I played it, I thought, oh, you know what? I've cracked the code. I know exactly what's going to get me the most points. I'm going to do that every time. But when I was playing with my parents, I deliberately nixed those strategies every time I played. I said, okay, I did that strategy. I'm not doing that this time. And then I would do another strategy, be like, oh, that's a cool strategy. And then I would do another strategy and another one, try to find different ways to use this system, because I always felt that Orleans, the downside to it was that you can just play the same game every time. And I was surprised and shocked to see my score go up every time with the different strategies that I implemented. And that was very exciting for me. And it was very exciting to discover the different avenues that were out there. So because of that, it's definitely my number 6. Now, the communal number 6 has already been said. This is Clank, a deck building adventure. We combined any sort of duplicates or future iterations, right? Clank appeared on 6 lists, garnering a total of 27 points, giving it 162 points after the math magic. And I don't need to say more about Clank. We already talked about it already. Very solid system, really fun theme, and just implemented really, really well. It was because of how good this game is that the people who own the license to Dune, they reached out to Paul Dennen. They're like, hey, we really like Clank. Do you want to do something with Dune? And he's like, yeah, I think I Dune. I think I Dune. So that's kind of a cool story as well. Moving along to my number 5, this is Harry Potter Hogwarts Battle. A really solid sort of campaign-style game. You're going to go through 7 different levels, basically. You get the box, you get 7 different levels. There's 7 different packs of cards in there. And then once you've gone through those 7 levels, you have that mini campaign. You can have a standalone game where you just mash up all the villains together. You mash up all the cards and fight each other. I love the idea of this campaign, right? I love the idea of these unlockable cards. It gives you a journey to go on. It kind of holds your hand. It gives you a legacy style experience without the legacy elements to it. And then it gives you a fully fledged game that you can play afterwards. That's pretty good. On second occurrence, I probably should have put this a little bit lower. I probably should have put Orleans over it. I think I do enjoy Orleans a little bit more. I think like I'm itching to play Orleans more than Harry Potter after talking about it. Because I think with Harry Potter, the asymmetrical abilities weren't that interesting. And I found it very frustrating to have a card market, if you're playing like everything mashed together, that version, to have a card market that doesn't feel balanced and doesn't feel like you even have enough money in your hand to purchase some of these things. So it just ends up being like dead zones in the market. And that's not really fun. It's fun to get the cards and acquire them. And once you get that going, it's great. But like in the official rules, there's no way to refresh the card market. I just think that's really stupid. And then they said, okay, fine. We heard you. You can refresh it once. You can refresh it once every game. I also think that's stupid, right? Like if there's a cost to refreshing the market, then you are expending energy to refresh that market, right? Like you are making a choice to refresh the market. I suppose it makes you deal with the things that you have at hand rather than just constantly cycling through to try to find your favorite card. But if you're doing that, you're never going to win anyway, because if you're wasting all your time cycling through, you haven't built up your deck and you can't do anything. And by that time, it'll be too late. Even still, it was a pretty good system. And I really like the campaign style of it. And so that's why I wanted to put it on this list. That idea of like year 1, year 2, year 3, I find really exciting. And I think that is the main draw for people if you're interested in it. Moving on to collective number 5, clocking in on 5 lists. The last 2 were on 6 lists. These were on 5 lists, giving it a total of 37.5 points. I don't know why I got a 0.5 there. But you know what? I trust Vault Boy and I trust the process. So giving it a total of 187.5 points, we have Aeon's End. Aeon's End is a fantastic game, fantastic system. It's something I'm excited to explore more. I just got, or I got sent to me while I was away, Aeon's End, The New Age, which I can't wait to check out. And also Aeon's End Outcasts, and the Outcast system especially, or maybe it's the New Age. It's the New Age, yeah. The New Age comes with the Expedition mode, and then Outcast continues with that. And so I also did an unboxing with my friend Zach on the channel of Aeon's End Past and Future. It was the sort of latest expansion and has this Expedition mode. The Expedition mode is basically what I've been lauding Harry Potter about. I first played Aeon's End with my friend Zach. We played the Legacy version. The first Legacy version I've played all the way through, and I think that's an incredible way into the system because it holds your hand and it builds in all the elements that then you find are in various expansions, right? Each expansion kind of gives a new little twist on things, but I'm really excited to have a copy of those 2 things. I think they were kind of sent to me by accident. I said, "Oh, I don't have the base game," because I was just planning on using Zach's, but really I was talking about something else that I didn't have the base game for, that I sent an expansion for, and Terraforming Mars Ares Expedition. And then I got sent those 2 things, and I wasn't upset about it in the least because I really love the game. I think Aeon's End is fantastic, and I can't wait to delve into this system a little bit more. The whole gimmick of Aeon's End is that it's a deck builder where you don't shuffle your deck. You just take it and you flip it over. And that is the least interesting thing to me about the game. That's what it puts itself forward in the marketing. It's like, wow, look at this cool, unique thing. But it doesn't really matter whatsoever. It doesn't matter whatsoever. Who cares about it? That's not what's interesting about it. What's interesting is the variants of monsters that are out there, the variants of characters that you can be, all with their own little different starting decks, and how you get your spells out there. You got to deal with the little minions while fighting the big bad, and you also have to then unlock your breaches, your breach mages, and unless you have an open breach, you can't put spells in there. So you're really juggling, how much do I build my deck for buying power? How much do I build it with spells and attacks? How much time do I spend opening the breaches? Can I deal with it with only 2 breaches? But if I open this 3rd one, then everything gets a +1 attack on it. But these people need to be bought off with money, and these people need to be attacked with fire. There are so many fun things to manage in it, and the amount of content that exists for this game is absolutely bananas, and yet they still keep finding ways to add new twists to the game that I find are exciting. Zach owns pretty much everything Aeon's End except Aeon's End Outcasts, so we'll be excited to dive into that for sure, and maybe you'll see Aeon's End on my list upcoming. But that's our collective number 5, Aeon's End. It should be higher. Moving along to my number 4, you won't see this on a collective list, but I think it's actually really good. This is Epic Spell Wars of the Battle Wizards Annihilaggedon deck building game. Now, there's also Annihilaggedon 2, Nacho Extreme or something, and there's also Annihilaggedon 3 that's coming out, Satanic Panic. They're all the same game. They're all basically the same system. I would lump all of these together. You could get whichever one you want. This is by Cryptozoic. I wasn't sure about this one. Snottia. I mean, it has all of the charm and humor of a very body humor of Epic Spell Wars. If you've ever played it, it's kind of a really big take that fest. But as you can see, the lovely Genital Harpies, which gives you 2 power and deals 2 damage to each foe for each limp wand you control in your discard pile. I think that should tell you all you need to know about the theme and style of the game. However, this is another one of those games where it's sort of a free-for-all attack each other game. It works very well in a head-to-head, but this is basically the DC deck building game, but fixed in a way that makes it interesting and exciting. Whereas I've never enjoyed the DC deck building game, and I think it might be improved because I think they've learned from Epic Spell Wars. I just feel like this does a much better job because you can attack each other, and the attacking each other doesn't hurt because you're not eliminating each other from the competition. You basically have infinite lives, and you always go back to 20 health, but anytime you get down to 0 health, you get a little dead wizard token. And so those dead wizard tokens give you negative points and kind of like a debuff or something. Or sometimes they're random effects, right? So who knows what might happen. But because of that flow, it doesn't feel bad to be attacked, and yet it still feels good to attack people, right? And I just think that's an incredible balance to be able to achieve. I had no expectations for this game. I didn't think it was going to be that good. I think Epic Spell Wars is fine, but I feel like I've kind of outgrown it. But I actually really enjoyed it. All the cards feel powerful, and it's also a fun game when everything you get feels overpowered, right? Like if everything is overpowered, it's pretty balanced. And so because of that, you can really just delve into this zany feeling and have a lot of fun. And it's pretty cheap too. I really enjoy it, and I didn't expect to. So it is my number 4. My number 4, yeah, this is my number 4 for sure. This was one of the sort of easy adds onto the list, and one that I was excited to add and excited to talk about because I don't feel like a lot of people would talk about it, probably because of the theme, but it actually really works. Like, it really works, and I can't believe that it does. You could get any iteration. I found there's like slight twists in the second one. There are these little nacho cheese tokens that can do some stuff. It doesn't really matter. Just get, if that feels interesting to you, check it out. On the other side of the spectrum, that's certainly not zany, but some might describe as dull and bland. We have, appearing on 6 lists, 37 points total, garnering 222 total points. That is the grandfather of deck building games, the one that invented the language. It's Dominion. Dominion that has been re-implemented by 2nd edition. Dominion that has how many expansions? 53, it says. Well, I'm sure a lot of those are update packs and promo cards, but there's a lot. I wish there was actually, this expansion tab was actually useful to us in this moment. That's okay. There's not too much to say about Dominion. You start out as a pathetic little earl with 3 duchies, and you hope to get yourself a province one day. You have 10 cards out, 10 random cards that make up the market, and you just try to get the most points. The idea being that whatever points you get are going into your deck and will limit your deck building flow, right? So you can create these really overpowered combos. Dominion is great. I would just prefer to play Dominion digitally. I think the expansions do add a lot to the game, and so I played a lot of the expansions digitally when it was like a free-to-play thing, when they had their own app or whatever. And then I became much less interested in playing the base game. And I'm much less interested in owning all of those expansions because it takes up way too much space. However, my neighbor, Yuval, he has a really great way of playing Dominion. You put every set of cards into a little bag, and then you just reach into the bag and you mix them up and you pull out 10. And then that's how you set up the market. So really quick to set up the market. And then with it being that quick, maybe it'd be easier to get to the table. I don't know. For me, it's not on my list because, the expansions make it exciting. And I just don't think you need to purchase all of them, right? I don't think it's worth the sort of $200 that it would take to get the expansions to mix and match and have that exciting feeling. And yeah, I think it's just good. I'll still play Dominion, but it's not something that I'm itching to play, and it's left my own personal collection, and so then I wasn't going to put it on this list for me personally. But I know a lot of people love it, and that makes sense. But for me, what I love, coming in at number 3, we've already talked about it, it's Aeon's End. Aeon's End is fantastic. I don't need to rehash it, but it is my number 3. I'll happily play a game of this anytime. I love playing it with Zach. I'm very excited to play this new content. Aeon's End, I feel, can also be lumped in with Astro Knights as well. I have a review on Astro Knights, and we did kind of like a dual unboxing of Astro Knights. We can see re-implemented by Astro Knights. There's enough of a difference, I feel, to have both, And the main difference is that Aeon's End has a fixed card market and Astronauts has a variable card market. And so it's a different puzzle in that regard. I found Astronauts to be a bit easier too, and I don't see that they've added in any like particularly difficult villains, at least in this first section. So I would be inclined to grab Aeon's End off the shelf. I was excited to have Astronauts because I didn't own Aeon's End, and then I'd have something like Aeon's End at my house. But now that I own Aeon's End at my house, well, I'm probably going to play that more than I'm going to play Astronauts, to be honest. But yeah, Aeon's End is my number 3. Moving along to the collective number 3, which also, I'm just going to tell you right now, Loops is my number 2. And this is surprising to me that it was my own personal number 2, because it is my number 2 game of all time. That is Attack on Titan, the deck builder. But I'm not the only one who likes it, and I feel very vindicated in this. It made number 3. It was on 6 different lists, garnering 44 total points, making it 264 points. Oh man, is this a good game. It's just such a friggin' great game. This is what I was talking about when we were talking about Legendary. I won't reach for Legendary because I have Attack on Titan. Now, it's probably out of print. Anytime I see a copy, I will try to buy it, just so I can have them and make sure they never wear out, or I can then give them to friends or whatever, because I just love this game so much. I'm also a huge fan of the Attack on Titan anime. Fantastic. I don't know when this is coming out, but I know the final hour of anime is coming out very soon. Maybe I'll wait to watch that with Zach. That'll be fun because we both really like it. Basically, it's this tower defense game. You have these 5 walls. Titans will appear on the other side of those walls. You can see there's some Titans up here. There's 1 wall remaining, and then there's a bunch of items and things that you can acquire on the inside of the wall. Oh, this is showing that the tokens included in the game are absolute garbage. They are. You should just have a dial or a dice. That's what I use. Yeah, we can see people playing here. You can see of the 4 walls out there, you have your standees of the characters that are, well, they shouldn't be there, but they should be on the inside of the wall or the outside of the wall. And this is where I really figured out that I love deck building with a board, because the way you get these items is not typical to any deck builder. Like so many deck builders, you can buy whatever you want from the market. It doesn't matter. I think everything that I've listed, you can buy just right from the market. Everything on this list currently, you just have the opportunity to get things. In Attack on Titan, you have a movement stat on some cards, and you have a power stat. Power lets you buy cards, but movement lets you move around to different sections of the wall. There are 10 sections, 5 outside and then 5 inside. And if you can't move to the place that has the item, you can't buy that item that turn. If you can't move to where the Titan is, then you're not agile enough to go kill the Titan and to protect and defend the wall. It's so awesome to juggle those two things. It forces you to make choices. It forces every game to be different because of where things come up. Now, you can always just let the Titans attack all the walls and reduce it all down to just 1 wall, and then you don't have to worry about it. But then you've reduced your life points from 10 to 2, and you're gonna have a pretty hard time fighting everything off. It's also very, very difficult, especially when you first get it. At this point, I played it enough that I'm pretty consistent on winning, even at like a ramped up difficulty. Whenever I play a game, we draw 1 extra card to fill the market, which means more Titans spawn quicker, and you get through the deck quicker. If you get to the end of the deck, you lose. Or if you kill too many people, have too many people on your team die, you lose. Or if all of the wall sections fall, you lose. But it is so fun. I absolutely adore this game, partly because of the anime, but mostly because of that movement. And that's just so exciting and unique to me, that things are locked out if you can't get to them. And so choosing, okay, I'm going to go to this far side of the wall, I hope, but I'm banking on that no Titans will come up, because I know in my next hand, I'm not going to have movement. And so I'm not going to be able to help protect the wall, and I'm relying on you all to do that. And so that creates like a really great cooperative experience. It kind of suffers from the one deck can be built as like the real tank deck, and the other decks could be more support, right? It kind of behooves you to load up one deck to be really good so that you have a consistent character that can kill things. And so if you're not communicating effectively, or if you have somebody who just wants to be that player and have all the good cards and like doesn't care about anybody around the table, then it can suck. But generally that doesn't happen for me, and so I really love the difficulty level. I love that movement aspect, and I love the theme, and yeah, I just think it's so fun. If you see a copy used, definitely grab it. Don't pay like $1,000 for it, but pay 40. Pay 40, I'd pay 40 for it, maybe even 50. Like, I really love it. So yeah, that's why it's my number 2 on this list, and it's only number 2 because there's so many aspects that I love it. And so the deck building is very satisfying to me, but also the movement is so satisfying to me, and because of that, there's so many things to enjoy, that it is not just a pure deck building game, which is my number 1, a pure deck building game. And so that's why I put it at number 2. And also to kind of shake up the list, to show that I really enjoyed my number 1 game. Anyway, that's my number 2. That's our collective number 3. Moving on to collective number 2, we have on 9 people's lists, 52 points, 468 total points. We have the Lost Ruins of Arnak. I played this game for the first time on Board Game Arena recently this summer. I think it's pretty fun. I see the hype. I really like the flow of it. I was surprised at this. Often gets compared with Dune Imperium, and I think there's no similarities between the two, other than you have minor restrictions through playing your cards. But Dune, you have a specific symbol, and Lost Ruins, there's like a hierarchy of travel, right? You can have a plane, which can get you anywhere, or you can have little feet, which only get you in certain places on the board. There's a board, and there's a deck building, and there's also a tech track that you're going up. But like, I find the deck building in this, or the pool building rather, to be significantly less than Dune, because you have less cards. You're really only getting a card a turn, really, and you only have 5 turns, and your hand starts with your deck starts with 8 cards, one of which you're going to immediately destroy. So it feels really pared down to me. I don't know if this would have made my list of the top 10, having played it just the one time. I don't think it would have, because I feel I really like the choices that you get to do on the board. And I really like the resources that you get on the board and using those resources to get stuff. I think it's a very satisfying game, and going up the little tech exploration track feels fun. And this is definitely a really fun game that I'm excited to dive back into and probably want a copy of. But from a pure deck building, if you're wanting a deck building experience, it doesn't really hit that way for me. But don't listen to me. That's why you listen to 9 people who put it on their lists, giving it a total of 44 points. No, 52 points, 468 points. That's almost double the collective number 3. That's our collective number 2, Lost Ruins of Arnak. Moving along to my number 1 game, my number 1 deck building game of all time, and it is a deck building game. This is why Dominion isn't on my list. This is why Dominion isn't in my collection, because it has been replaced by Trains. Trains is the better version of Dominion. Like a base Trains versus a base Dominion. Trains has got it beat, and you know why? Because it's got a board. That's right, it's deck building with a board, something I really look and love. Trains gives you all of that lovely, you can see there's room for expansion and sleeves. This is the basic box. It's a very big box, as so many deck builders don't earn their box size, but that's a problem for another day. The thing about Trains, at least there's a board to, justify having to have that box size. In Trains, you're going to have this map out there, and you're trying to get one that has cubes on it. Yeah, you're going to be putting your little routes down. If you have a little cube on a thing, that means you have a train into that system. You have to build out from your own trains and expand into other neighboring cities. And the more cities you're touching, the more points you can get. But like Dominion, it's basically like a Dominion clone. Like if Dominion didn't exist, Trains wouldn't exist, right? Trains has taken the great parts about Dominion and then incorporated a really fun board management, route management aspect to it. And that's why I just like it better, because it gives me more, right? And so with Trains, you also have that aspect of the cards, which will give you points as well. You've got this whole 10 card market or however it is. I think it's 6 and 6 or something, with variable cards that'll swap out every time, just like Dominion. It'll change your strategy. Some will affect the board, some will affect your hand, some will affect your buying power, and then you can also just purchase things to give you points as well. So you can get those points directly into your deck, or you can get points on the board. It doesn't force you to do one or the other, but it encourages you to do both. And I think that's why I really love this game. Somebody said it was out of print recently. I'm sorry if it is, but if you see it secondhand, I got this secondhand for like 15 bucks. People think it's just okay, but I think it is fantastic. So if you want to check that out, if you see a good price for it and you like deck building, definitely pick it up. It gives me that like classic deck building feel, but in a way that is more satisfying than Dominion. So that's my number one. Our collective number one, it was on 11 lists, garnering a total of 59 points, making it 649 as our grand winner, and that is Dune Imperium. Dune Imperium, we talked about it, was my number 8. I was one of those 11. Dune Imperium manages to snuff out Arnak in the big tussle. I mean, Arnak is still 28 on Board Game Geek. Dune Imperium is number 8. Both of these games are fantastic and very different experiences. I think you could own both. I really do. Like I would play them in different scenarios. And there's not much more I can say about Dune than I did when I was breaking it down, but people love it. It's a game that keeps growing and probably will be higher on my list the more that I end up playing it. Although no, it probably won't be, because again, with a focus on the deck building, I like the deck building, but I like all the other aspects too. And that I think makes a really fully fleshed game, but not necessarily one that's going to move up in my personal preference. But hey, that's why we all have our own list criteria. We all have our own classification. That's why I like this collective list versus my own list. So you get both. You get the benefits of both lists and can check out some great deck building games. So drop in the comments below, what are your favorite deck building games? Which ones got snubbed? Deck building, pool building, bag building, whatever you want to call it. And I'm just going to run through quickly in our honorable mentions section, run through everything else that were on people's lists. As well, coming in at number 11, we had StarCraft Forbidden Stars. It's got a deck building element to it. On 3 lists, also on 3 lists, Tyrants of the Underdark. On 4 lists, and number 13 was Quest for El Dorado, but it was low enough that it didn't multiply. But still, on 4 lists, Harry Potter Hogwarts Battle also on 4 lists, but lower than that. Endless Winter, Obsession both got onto 3 lists. Ascension got onto 4 lists, but again, only got 12 total points, so didn't make it. Then we have Mage Knight or Star Trek Frontiers. Now we're getting to the 2-list territory. Hardback, Cubitos, Thunderstone, Quacks of Quedlinburg got on 3 lists, but again, it was sort of low enough that it didn't make it. Orleans was on 2. The Witcher of the Old World was on 2. Century Golem was on 2. Is that really? Oh yeah, that's a pool builder, right? You're putting things into your hand, and then you're picking them up. Yeah, okay. Rococo was on 2 lists. Again, just missed mine. Paperback Adventures on 2. Great Western Trail. Hero Realms, yeah, like I said, because Star Realms and Hero Realms were divvied up and they were smashed together. And then on 1 list, these are the ones that I want to highlight. They're obviously not going to make our collective top 10 because there's only on 1 list, but this was number 1. These were the number ones on some people's lists. Codex, Card Time Strategy. I'd never heard of it before, but it is the number 1 deck builder. Somebody also put deck construction as their number 1 because they're like, listen, I prefer deck construction. So screw you, deck building. I like deck construction games. I'm like, all right, yeah, that's fine. Friday was number 1 on someone's list. Mystic Vale, Spirit Island. Yeah, because you're amassing your cards as well, right? You're developing your unique spells. I wouldn't have made my list because I don't. There's so many other aspects of the game that I feel are more on the forefront. That was number 1. And then Star Trek Frontiers was number 1. Moving along to some people's number 2, because they've all got 9 points. We have Automobiles, so very similar to trains, Black Rose Wars, Forbidden Stars, Puzzle Strike, Slay the Spire, Isofarian Guard, and then we're just going to keep on going down. Altiplano got 8 points. Corrosion, Epic Spell Wars, that was mine. Mage Knight, Moonrakers, Super Motherlode, Viscounts of the West Kingdom, Tainted Grail, all got 7 points. No, Trains. Trains should have been up there. Trains got 10 points. Oh, Trains should have been on 2 lists, because it was also on my list. That's fine. Trains, Wonderland's War, A Studying Emerald, Coffee Roaster, Keep the Heroes Out, Undaunted, War of the Worlds, The New Wave, Arkham Horror LCG, Concordia, Heat, Rune Age, Runebound, Dale of Merchants, Helionox, Snap, Arctic Scavengers, Bloodborne the Card Game, Book It, Dice Forge, Living Forest, Quarriors, and Star Wars the Deck Building Game. Those are all the ones that made it onto people's lists. That's a huge list of deck builders that you can go out and check out for yourself. Also, checking out in the comments for more deck building goodness. Thanks so much for watching. Probably the next one of these will be the top 10 co-op games. That's the ones that we're making our list and talking about over on the Discord. If you're interested, you can sign up for Patreon down below to participate in this discussion, and you can also participate in our daily deathmatch voting as well, which I have to go do right now. Thanks for watching. My name is Chris George. I don't have a catchphrase, but I do have 75 deck building games to play today. I gotta do it today. I gotta do it today. They all look so good. I gotta do it today.